You're listening to Best Forevers, a podcast for kindred spirits. A podcast that encourages you to love more on your friends and to further consider the issues that plague friendships. I'm Alysa Lucas, and I'm celebrating 3 years of Best Forevers podcasting. Whoop, whoop! And I'm here with the two people that made my life happen.
You got the blood test back on that yet?
Oh, my dad's got jokes for days and for years, actually. Yes, it's my parents. Say hello, Jim.
Hello, Jim.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Mom.
Hi there.
That's Nancy. Dad, you and your jokes. Okay, so I thought it would be fun to talk to my parents for the 3rd-year podiversary of Best Forevers. I first wanted to ask you a couple of questions about what was I like as a kid when it came to friendship. There.
Let me think on that.
You mean when you started calling everybody your friendies?
Yes, let's hear about that.
Well, I don't know that you could say friends, so you called them friendies. Can I visit my friendies? Can I have my friendies over? And I think your friendship actually started with a babysitting co-op that I was in, where we swapped off other mothers and we would watch other kids, and you got to meet a lot of kids across town and became friends with them and still are friends with some of them today. But you were 2 years old.
And I talked about the co-op in the very first episode of the podcast. Yeah. So,
but that's when you started. That's when you started with all of the friendies that you had, and like I said, a lot of them you are still friends with today.
Yeah, that's quite amazing that some group that probably helped moms and dads out led to a lot of people having friendship or making connections. So, Dad, what was your thoughts about me as a young person with friends?
I didn't know you had any friends.
I was just about to say, can you do the classic joke where it's like, Dad, I'm going to go out with my friends. You have friends? Which probably, I don't know when you started that joke, but maybe part of my life has been to show you and prove to you that I do, in fact, have friends.
Well, I'm still not convinced.
Hey, guess where I got it from? This guy.
Snark, you mean?
Yeah.
I don't remember too much about your early friendships, but I know as you grew older and you were in middle school, sometimes that was a love-hate relationship with frenemies that you had, and you did have some legitimate friends.
Yeah.
And then later in high school, you had more friends. Mm-hmm. And then I think after you graduated from high school, you sort of blossomed into many friendships with a lot of different friends. And what is amazing to me is that you still have contact on a regular basis with many of these people that you haven't been around for years and years, and you still talk to them or Skype with them or whatever.
Yeah.
Or email perhaps. I don't know for sure, but you've always had a lot of friends.
I think, in high school when my friend Allison, who was friends to many people, she was known as Sunshine. I think when she passed away in a car accident in the summer of 1995, I think that might have also led to sort of that blossoming of like focusing on maintaining and keeping friends and being
how quickly they can go away.
Absolutely. So I know this might be a little different, but what was it like growing up in your houses? Were friendships encouraged?
No, not in mine.
No.
So like it was all family all the time?
It was
and
family all of the time. My one sister had a friend, the best friend that practically lived at our house.
Yeah.
And I'm the oldest of 6 kids. And I had a lot of acquaintances. Mm-hmm. If I wanted to do something on a Friday night in high school, I could call many people.
Yeah.
But they were not my friends where I would share confidences and with. They were just, we're in high school together, so we share a class, so that's what we have in common, and that was about it.
Oh, what about for you, Dad?
I think in my very early life, I was fairly isolated from other children. It wasn't until I went to school that, like from kindergarten through grade school, that I really, and I don't even know if I would say that I developed friendships. I knew kids, and but we didn't really hang out with family too much. And the friends I had were the kids, 3 or 4 kids that lived in our neighborhood.
Yeah, which is a common place for friendships to start, is like ones that
Right.
are geographically close. How do you think your view of friendship either stayed the same or changed when you left your parents' houses? So you both went to where you met at Western Michigan University. Go Broncos.
Let me just say this. When I was small, I was bullied a lot in school and
Give me
out of-
names. I just want to talk to them. I just want to see what's up with them.
Well, there was one particular incident where I felt threatened
Yeah.
by older kids in our neighborhood, much older.
Assholes.
And in school, I was very awkward, and I've never had the same outlook on friendship and being social like your mother has. I'm very content to when I was running, just go out running and being by myself and in my thoughts,
Yeah.
or riding
your-
my bicycle. And I really have to say that maybe pets have taken the place of human friendships.
Yeah, absolutely.
And his wife.
Yeah. Well, I always say that Dad was always okay with wife and children and all of his animals, and I think that's sort of where I developed the love for animals, and I call all of my, bless you, Finn. Speaking of, I call all my cats and my dog my best friends, because you spend so much time with them and that sort of thing, and they do fill any voids, especially like thinking now with like isolation with quarantine, like what it would be like for me without the pets would be very different than with them, for sure. And so I would say, Dad, that seeing, once I was alive and could see and observe that, yeah, I could see that running was certainly something that you enjoyed doing, and that you always appreciated all of us and spent time with us, and that it was you always said the best, what's the line, that most dogs are better than most people?
Yes.
And that's what he would say a lot. And so that was something. And I remember, you had one friend that you ran with, but now I feel like you and Joe are like besties. You got a best friend now, and you go kayaking and hiking, and when you could, go to see movies, and you play chess and you talk and that sort of thing. And
Yep.
so how do you think that changed? Like, how did that come to be?
Well, you all moved out of the house.
I'm still there.
Yeah, with your nose behind a book.
Sounds about right.
But I to be perfectly candid, I've never felt a real abiding desire or need to really like have friends.
Yeah.
I mean, given the business that I was in practicing law, I developed a lot of cynicism about people in general. And there were some exceptions, of course, like your mother and you kids and things like
Yay.
that. But
Finally.
I just never felt like I needed a lot of people.
Yeah.
I mean, to be perfectly candid, I mean, if I have free time, I might prefer to watch an old movie or maybe
Something with war in it.
no doubt.
Maybe
Or Cowboys.
Midway.
Cowboys.
Midway.
Yes. Yeah.
Patton.
Yeah.
Or Brother, Where Art Thou?
Patton, I would say
Midway.
Yeah, it's definitely Midway.
Saving Private Ryan is more authentic than Patton.
Gotcha. Mom, what about you? How did your friendships change when you left your parents' house to adulthood?
Well, I lived in a dorm, so I got to know a lot of people in the dorm and made really good friends with a girl that lived 2 doors down. And we were friends, and we did things together as a family for many, many years.
Yeah.
Even after we were married, until her husband died.
Yeah. Oh.
And then, and she was very young. She had 3 kids under the age of 7. And so I'm still in touch with her, but not like
you were.
I was. But I have had a couple of really, what I thought were really good friends and got burned.
Yeah.
So I was more careful. after that. But I've been in the babysitting co-op. I'm still friends with all those ladies and still go out several times a year. Well, I did before COVID.
Yeah.
But went out several times a year with lunches, and we celebrated birthdays. And the first Saturday of December, we always celebrate Christmas together. We go shopping and spend a day together.
Yeah.
I'm also took a class, a dream class.
35 years ago.
Yeah, at least 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm still friends with two of the ladies that are in there. We were going out we've been to each other's houses. We there are four of us, and one of the ladies died about 3 years ago. And then one of the ladies' husbands died. So we've been through a lot
Together.
Together, and they're still really good friends.
Yeah.
But they're not ones that you see outside of when you go to dinner.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
Yeah.
So I was so busy at work, and I had a lot of friends at work, but they were work friends.
Yeah.
And once I retired, I just don't have anything in common with them anymore.
Yeah.
Work was it.
Yeah.
Although one of the ladies I went to visit on Friday, we've worked together in two different places for over 38 years.
Wow.
So, I mean, all you kids grew up together,
Yeah.
at the same time. She went through her divorce, and I was there. And she had a lot of illnesses, and I was there for her, during that. So, again, since I was a manager and an administrator, I couldn't be friends with a lot of people at work because I was their boss.
Yeah.
At one time, I had 35 people underneath of me.
Yeah.
And those were the people I worked with closely. And I really couldn't be really good friends with them because of the crossing a line. So when I retired, it was like I was so glad not to have to listen to everybody else's problems and solve their problems for them, that it was just really nice to be at home and becoming more of an introvert instead of the extrovert I was.
The
my whole
social
life.
butterfly that we
Of
know.
the family too.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, so it sounds like the houses that you grew up in, which I don't know if you think might be a sign of the times, like when you grew up as a kid, friendship wasn't really the center, or it might have been something like neighborhood and things like that.
Family.
Yeah, family. So your siblings or, your
cousins.
friends and things like that. So what do you think you did when you became parents to me, Jeffrey and Michael? Like, did you think that your point of view on friends changed, or did the times change? Did we want friends? Like, how do you think that came to be?
When I was a kid, there were 8 of us living in a very tiny house.
Yeah.
And there really wasn't room to bring friends home.
Yeah. Or at least
I
not
don't
all
think-
of you at one time.
I don't even think I brought anyone home
Yeah.
as a friends to do stuff or stay overnight too much.
Yeah.
I was in Girl Scouts, and those were my friends.
Yeah.
But again, we didn't really have that. But when you were born, your brothers were friends with each other.
Yeah.
But then they were friends there were kids in the neighborhood, and
Be
then
home
I got
by the time the street lights are on.
and we got into the babysitting co-op.
Yes.
And all 3 of you kids still are in touch with your friends.
Yeah.
And I think with all of you moving away from home and away from family, you had to make friends because there wasn't family around.
Yeah. So
or your friends weren't around, so you had to make new friends.
Yeah. So it's like we create like family that is friends. Like,
yes.
Well, I also think like we did a lot of stuff. Like I was in ballet, and the boys did soccer, and then all 3 of us did swimming. And we went up to the Elks during the summer. We could ride our bikes up there to do swim practice, and then go back later for open swim and things like that. So, Dad, what do you think? Do you think it was a change of the times, or do you think that you encouraged us to have friendships?
Let me back up, because I think there's a side of this that your mother didn't discuss that I feel is...
Oh, now we get into the tea. Getting the hot goss.
Well, one of the things that your mother told me early on in our relationship was, I don't know at what point it was, probably 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th grade.
Yeah.
She didn't feel like she had a lot of friends. Mm-hmm. And so she read a book.
One? No. A ton of books.
Well, let me finish. She read a book about friendship. I wasn't told that it was 72 titles. It was just one title.
Yeah.
Now, I'll stand corrected if it was 72. Maybe she did a research project. I don't know. But anyway, she came away from that, from whatever reading that she did, with a promise to herself, as I interpret it, that she was going to be friends with everybody.
Yeah.
And so she didn't have just like a clique of friends.
Yeah.
All the social stratus that she confronted in school, like rock and roll people, the greasers.
What is this? Is this the movie Grease? Were you friends with John Travolta? Oh,
No.
Danny Zuko.
But she went across the whole spectrum of different groups within the school with the promise to herself that she would be friends with everybody.
Yeah.
And later in high school, she ran for a position on the high school government, and she was elected. And I'm sure that was because she had made friends with so many different people.
You know, that really reflects, I think, my high school experience. I mean, you mentioned, like, Dad earlier, middle school, and I always say middle school is weird and everyone's ugly and weird and uncomfortable.
It's 3 years of hell.
Exactly. It's the worst time. But I would say that in high school that I was friends with a lot of different people, and, you know, maybe that's something that I picked up from Mom, but Mom was always like, the big thing was being nice and being polite, and so maybe that was a way to make friends, right? Is like you're being nice or kind to every single person. So
I'm much more confrontational, as you know. I mean, if I've tried to engage people recently on political issues. And
that's your first problem.
Yeah, well, it was a sad lesson to learn, because I found out that the people that I try to engage are not capable of critical thinking, and they're not fact-based, and it's hard to find any middle ground.
Yeah.
And and going back to your original question about friendship, my family was a lot different than your mother's. We very seldom saw the extended family. My father was estranged from his mother and his oldest brother. He came from a family of 11 or 12.
Yeah.
Some people that are listening may remember that my paternal grandfather was a bank robber.
Yes, and if you listen to Fatalities, it was a bonus episode called The Legend of Charlie Ballou, and I'll put the link in show notes if you'd like to learn a little bit more about my dad's grandpa.
Yeah, so anyway, my situation was a lot different than your mother.
Yeah.
And I think that sort of set the stage for me to not have a lot of friends.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't recall really being lonely. I felt awkward a lot of times around other people.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I was really a junior or senior in high school that I sort of came out of that shell.
Yeah. Well, and what I would sort of gather from that is like that when you came together as a couple and got married and then started having kids, and then I imagine that a lot of people that you interacted with was because of me and the boys.
Right.
And that that a lot of the things that we were doing, which might have been different than what your family would have, like what your dad would have wanted for you and your brother, and what grandma and grandpa would have wanted for you and your 5 siblings. And like I said, we were in all these different sports and things like that. And then
Brownies, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts.
Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts.
Church groups.
Ice cream socials.
And I was on the PTA, so we had a lot of interaction with the schools. And
Well, so in some ways it feels like once you moved on, you could do what you wanted, whether you were comfortable doing it, if it wasn't when you were married or it wasn't when you were 40. Like now, like you and Joe's are besties, you know, doing all sorts of stuff. And you know, you have these friends that you meet with all the time. And so it's like you can do friendship a little bit differently than maybe when you were as a kid. But maybe just that... I mean, maybe there's more to it in how I got into friendship, you know? Like, you know, middle school sucks, and I also felt like, you know, one of those kids where, you know, I fell roller skating, broke my front tooth in half, and had to wear a silver tooth, and so no one ever really looked at me as, like, any sort of object of affection in terms of, like, you know, the boys didn't like Mike Tyson. as I was nicknamed, goddamn bullies, right? And that maybe that was a way is that I went the route of friendship. And so maybe it is the idea of like how we're raised or things that we experience really impact or shape and how we or have friends. And you always allowed me to have friends and to explore those sorts of things. And so, that I appreciate. But I know you said like you haven't had as many friends in your life, but I can think of a few that you do have. Do you know who they are?
My children and my wife.
Right. That's a different episode for you and Mom being friends. But let's talk about, when do you think, so Jeffrey's the oldest and Michael and then me, when would you say that you think you went from us being parent-child relationships to maybe being friends?
I just mentioned that to you a week or two ago when we were talking. And we talk just about every day, as I do with Jeffrey, your eldest brother.
Yep.
Michael is in California and he keeps long hours. So
we have different schedules, so it's more of like once a week.
Yeah, but we FaceTime at least once a week. And for example, yesterday on Saturday, we must have talked for an hour to an hour and a half. We're FaceTime for that long.
Yeah, so you can see little Gogo, the grandchild, doing all sorts of what 2.5-year-olds do. Right.
I have to say that in terms of how I viewed children, my children, I was excited to become a father.
Yeah.
And I think I never looked at any of you as being a drag.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's not what I thought he was going to say. That's not what I thought you were going to say.
Well, I could have changed that instead of pain in the ass.
Yeah, you guys were kind of cool, so you were okay to be friends.
Yeah, but it's like when you're first born, children demand so much time and attention.
Yeah.
I always figured by the time that you were out of diapers and you could tie your shoes, we were good to go. And for example, like, how many days was it after she was born that we went to see The Jungle Book?
Oh, 2 or 3.
Yeah.
You were at the bookmobile the next day.
And then my first movie was a couple days and I saw The Jungle Book. Yeah. So I wasn't even a drag. You could take me to the movies.
Well, and I think that also cuts into when you could be friends it's individually, because Jeff, I'm sorry, Jeff.
Love you.
Yeah, love you.
Love you.
But Jeff needed more parental attention.
Well, he's the oldest, so he was getting into the most trouble first.
And then Michael moved away much sooner.
Yeah.
And Jeff was still in town, so we got together and whatnot. Michael moved away to North Carolina, and he never has lived at home again. Yeah. Where Jeff went away to Arizona State, then he came home again, so we knew him as an adult, but he still pulled a few chains. So we needed that. Whereas you were much more of a... you didn't get into trouble.
Because I saw them get into trouble. I'm smarter than that.
And we also traveled together a lot. Yeah. You worked with me with an association, and we went to the annual conference together for 3 or 4 days, and you worked with me. And so we got to, it wasn't a parent-child relationship at that time. It was, we were working together. Yeah. And you lived in town.
Yeah.
Through your Michigan State, through your master's degree. So we saw you all the time. We did things together.
Sunday dinner when Alysa brought home her laundry. But I also think what's interesting is that, although there are 3 of us kids, that I was the only one that really got to live in the house with the 2 of you without any other siblings. So all of high school, I was like the only child in some ways, with the boys away, and then being close until I went to Penn State. And then for 10 years was away in New York. And now that I'm back in Michigan, then we're now just an hour away and we can record this in the same space and that sort of thing. But Yeah, so I think it might depend on the child.
Yeah.
But what it sounds like from you, Dad, though, is that you were trying to determine whether or not we were cool enough to be friends with.
Oh no, just the opposite of true. I did things with you kids from the beginning that a lot of people probably don't do or wouldn't do, like taking you to a movie
Yeah.
3 days after you're born. Or, for example, you would not remember this, but your mother used to work every Friday night at Lane Bryant's at the Lansing Mall.
Oh, hey now.
And that was our night to get a pizza and pop.
Yep. And then watch
The Hulk.
and Dukes of Hazzard. I remember
Right.
that.
Well, there was one particular Friday night, and you couldn't have been much more than 2 or 3
Yeah.
if you were that old. But I took the kids to see Popeye, and you sat on my lap the entire time, and you were never a problem.
That movie was dope. I remember being in movie theaters, like, and other kids were talking, and I'd be looking at them like, "Can you be quiet?" Shh. You know?
Yeah, but even like with your brother Jeff, when Mason was born, I took him to see a movie. We went to see Transylvania 5-6.
The cartoon? Or 5,000.
5,000. No,
Are you talking about Mason or Jeff? Because
Mason.
Transylvania 5,000 is that 80s movie with, like, Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah, oh yeah. Gina Davis?
Yep, yeah, there's a bunch of good folks in that one.
No, this was the animated one.
Oh, okay.
But, Mason and I had a good time.
Yeah.
And I guess for me, age doesn't mean much.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say here is I never felt like you were anything other than my child, one of my children.
Yeah.
But you were also a friend at that time too.
Yeah. Well, and what I was going to say is that it also might depend necessarily, maybe not so much on the parent's point of view, but maybe on the child's point of view, because you could think you're my friend, but then you're grounding me and taking the TV away or taking cable away so I can't watch Dawson's Creek when everyone else is, and then I'm not cool in high school anymore. Thanks a lot for that. But
so
there's a level of authority that still plays a role that, like, even if we get along and I'm not a drag and all these kinds of things, is I might not view you in that way. And I would say that has changed over time. It really made a difference when I moved away to Pennsylvania, I would say, and like to be able to see that. And so I think one of the things is that different generations, like some people have had children after y'all had us, that there's sort of this like debate on whether or not parents should be friends with their children, right? Like there's a communication research about like when parents get divorced, if they use their children as confidants and should they, and sort of the impact of that, or just like treating your kids like a friend when they're in middle school or high school, and does that take away the ability to teach them things that they need to know, or to be able to punish them if they've done something wrong, or do people treat their children differently if they see them as their friends, right? And so there is a debate about that. I wouldn't say that you treated us like friends when we were kids. I would say that it's grown with not being able to be upset because I'm trying to watch TV and Dad's like, all right, time to do the dishes. Well, you know what I mean? And like you can move on and you can do other things and we can get together and we talk about like a wide range of things versus like the daily whatnots of the household,
Well, I think something you're missing out here on is the idea that if you're my child, you're automatically my friend. And that's not the case, because a parent has certain responsibilities to themselves as well as their child to make sure that they're going to become socialized human beings. Yeah. So people don't throw rocks at them in public. And
kick rocks, kid.
Yeah, and like we all have responsibilities, and where do you learn that? Hopefully you learn it in childhood. Some of us though learn it much later in life, unfortunately.
Yeah.
The other thing I was going to mention to you is one of the things that and you're the researcher on this, I'm not, I think that sometimes parents can be competitive with their children in later life. with fathers and sons, it may be more, or even daughters, it may be more like athletic kinds of competitions. If I wanted to be a baseball player but never quite made it, then I transfer that to my son or daughter, perhaps.
Yeah, like in a league of their own.
Yeah, or one that I think is a little more visible is like when the mother's in competition with her adolescent or young adult daughter, and she's still trying to dress and look like her daughter.
That was
which
something.
Is crazy to me, but
that's something I saw a lot when I was at the university, is that every year when the freshmen would come in and their mothers were dressed just like them, you know, it was kind of like living the day, you know, when they were in college, or that to realize that their kids were going off on their own, and this was a way to kind of connect with them. That was
well, and one of the things to like consider though too is like I think our society has changed. Like I just think about like Golden Girls and how they're supposed to be like 40 and 40s and 50s on that show, but they look much older. But then when you look at women now, it's different. Like, you know, society, especially like Hollywood, treat women like, well, you're no longer 25. I guess we'll see you in 15 years when you start auditioning for grandma roles. You know what I mean? Like, so I think women are seen differently, but I think your point is taken that, you know, if your children are leaving your house and your life has been about your child, generally because of the responsibilities that Dad's mentioning since they were born, that's approximately 18 years of focusing on them, and now they're becoming their own adult. Like, how do you sort of bridge that gap or that discrepancy that's going to come from, you know, there's going to be some sort of void. And in some ways, maybe it is parents then are waiting for their kids to come back over that gap back. You know what I mean? Like, it's like they need that time if they go to college or life on their own. And some people, I think, would say, no, my mom has been my friend my whole life, or my mom and dad continue to be friends. But I would have to say for me, because I think y'all, you know, we're good parents, and you know, sometimes we'd be mad about not being able to watch TV or doing chores. But I guess if that was what I was most upset about, then I think I probably had a pretty good childhood. But like that for me, I think it was moving beyond like the I'm under your roof type of thing.
Right. Well, we always get, the older the kids get, the smarter I become.
Oh, yeah.
That's from Mark Twain.
Yep.
Oh, Mark Twain.
Yeah.
He said, I was really surprised at how dumb my father was when I was 15.
Yeah.
But by the time I was 25, I was surprised at how smart he'd become.
Yeah. So it's like, and that's sort of what I wonder is like if there's just a difference in perception and experience and how we view situations, and that it's the kids. Parents might be waiting for kids to realize that, like, you know, like we don't want to do anything. Our parents, they're like, Mom, that's so stupid. I
roll.
Never do it. I roll, door slam, silent treatment. And then it's like, oh, yeah, that was probably pretty smart. Thanks for that tip.
The other part about this that occurs to me as I listen to this conversation is the fact that everything is in a state of change.
Yeah.
And you're only born one time.
Mm-hmm.
And as you get older and your parents get older, the idea is that you provide them with some guardrails to stay between, and consequently not watching television when you've got chores to do or homework is appropriate.
Yeah.
But by the same token, what we're doing, hopefully what parents are doing, is preparing their children for adulthood.
Yeah, what I discovered is that I can do chores while I watch TV.
It isn't one or the other.
I found a way to have the best of both worlds, Dad. But thanks for the guidance.
And even as you're older and your parents you may seem that your parents are friends, they still can't stop parenting.
Yeah.
And then that's when you
see my mommy and daddy.
And then you'll say, well, you know, you might do this, and then I can see you eye roll. Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
Oh, and Dad's classic line before he gives advice: take what you want and leave the rest.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I think you should get a podcast and call it that.
Well, actually,
or you give advice to people. Take what you want and leave the rest.
I would say that it took me about 60 or 65 years to learn that.
I also think I had a hand in that, though. because that is like basic. Well, I don't want to say basic, but that's what we talk about in communication, like social support. You know, that we automatically might want to start solving the problem, but the person might want to vent. And then I feel like we had that conversation. You might not recall.
Yeah,
it.
and Dad said, he wanted to fix it.
Yeah.
And you just wanted to vent.
Yeah.
Well, some of that is gender-based, though.
Absolutely.
Men typically want to hear what the problem is, and they want to give the solution.
It's more like masculine, feminine style communication, but yeah agreed.
And women tend to vent more, and men keep their feelings.
That's because we keep our rage inside, and we have to let it go.
That's not my experience. You've heard about the book, The Burning Bed?
Oh, snap. That's a story for fatalities, Dad, not for best forevers.
I'm sorry. I must not be oriented to time, place, and...
So do you have any other thoughts about friendship, parents being friends with children, or our friendship? Because, this came up because a couple weeks ago, Dad on the phone, he said... Well, because you're one of my best friends, and I was like, oh, dang. I already knew that, but thanks for telling me.
Thanks for confirming.
Yeah, and I was like, that's an episode.
Well, I think, I don't know who's gotten wiser over the years, you or me.
Me!
Well,
no.
in
both of us.
I roll.
And certainly within the field of communication and research and things like that, you're much more knowledgeable than I am. But wisdom doesn't come from books alone. Wisdom is life experiences mixed, hopefully, with what you've learned along the way.
Yeah.
And I would say that sometimes it's still hard not to be a parent.
Yeah.
And I think your mom would probably agree with me on that. I mean, we don't always agree with what our children do.
Yeah.
And
Mom would really like the bath towel hanger to be fixed.
Well, actually, so would I.
And that thing has been broken since I've lived here for 3 years.
But I really think that I have a better understanding as you and your brothers have gotten older that I don't have the solution to all your problems. You're going to have to figure it out for yourself.
Or it also used to be where if they would ask for something and make a suggestion, they would do the opposite of what you would say.
You're like
total opposite. So now they'll say, well, no, I really want to know.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you be like, don't touch the stove, it's hot. And then you touch the stove, you're like, oh my God, it was so hot. Well, why didn't you listen to me? Well, Mom.
What do they know?
What do they know? Well, no, this has been a fun conversation, like hearing about what friendship was like for you and sort of how it changed, but also I think like how our relationship has changed over the years in turning into friendships, or what I like to call parentships. Patent pending. So thank you, Nancy and Jim, for being on Best Forevers and for having me as a kid. Or like, well, you had me as a baby, Mom, but you know what I mean. Yeah. But having me as your child and allowing me to have all my friendies, because that led me to doing Best Forevers. And 3 years. Can you believe that the podcast has been around for 3 years?
No. I have one question.
Yes.
Where do I get my appearance fee?
Oh, Jesus Christ.
No.
Yeah, talk to Rooney about that. I'm sure she'll get right on top of that for you. So if you have stories of friendship and parenthood, please send them to bestforeverspod@gmail.com or find me on all the socials at bestforeverspod. And until next time, friends, think about, are you friends with your parents? Are you friends with your kids? Because without our friends, who would we be? Thanks for listening to Best Forevers. If you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe, rate, review, and of course, share with a friend. Please be sure to follow Best Forevers on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Best Forevers Pod, and I'm at Dr. Alysa Lucas on Twitter. You can always find the podcast webpage for more information at bestforeverspod.com, and share your stories of friendship by emailing me at bestforeverspod@gmail.com. And if you'd like to support the movement to love on our friends more, check out the podcast on patreon.com/bestforeverspod. Now, friends, check out this recommended podcast that you must get in your ear holes immediately.
Did you ever go on vacation with your family and hope the dance instructor would fall in love with you?
No, but I did think a guy with a giant boombox playing Peter Gabriel outside my window in the middle of the night meant true and undying love.
Listen to our podcast, Happily Ever Aftermath, where we revisit these movies, and it turns out they weren't the best ideas.
What were we thinking?
You can find our podcast, Happily Ever Aftermath, on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or your favorite podcatcher.
You can also tweet at us at HEAMCAST, Heamcast.